Hi, everybody. I'm a Dangerous Mix. Let's talk about Captain America Brave New World, which was directed by Julius Anna and stars Anthony Mackie, Harrison Ford, Danny Ramirez, Shur Haas, Carl Lumbly, Tim Blake Nelson, and Giancarlo Esposito. Captain America Brave New World tells the story of Sam Wilson, who is still trying to find his way and accept that he is good enough to be the new Captain America. Things from the MCU past come back to tell a new story that might be incredible. Before going to see this movie, I was really hoping to see something more in line with Winter Soldier rather than the other MCU movies, and this partially delivered on that expectation. But it also pulls in a lot of other elements that I just don't think were absolutely necessary, or they definitely caught me off guard. So, prior to actually seeing it in theaters, I was not hearing the greatest reviews on this, but I have always want to give it a chance and form my own opinion, and I encourage you to do the same. So, first, let me talk about something that I feel might be a spoiler, well, maybe a mini spoiler, and it's around what you need to know before going into this. So, I really think you need to see The Incredible Hulk before going to see this. Having seen Winter Soldier, Endgame, Falcon and Winter Soldier would have helped a bit, but that really only needs a few things from those, and that's mostly that Steve Rogers passed the shield to Sam and that he's kind of struggling to accept his role as the new Cap. So if you've seen Edward Norton play Hulk and you know that, you should be good to go. So let's talk a little bit about this story. As I said, it does have elements of Winter Soldier sprinkled in there, but it ultimately is a sequel to The Incredible Hulk, which is a little odd for something that's labeled as a Captain America movie. I know there are some movie rights things going on between what Universal had for Hulk, so maybe that prevented it from being an actual Hulk sequel, but they chose to go this direction, and we'll find out if it works for you. For me, it was passable, but it's definitely not as bad as some of the other more recent MCU films for sure. For the Captain America only parts in this film, he's still struggling to accept the fact that he's, not Steve Rogers. He shouldn't be Cap, all that stuff. He hasn't taken the superhuman serum. So, I think they did a good job of having his character kind of develop and move past that and finally start to accept that he can be captain. I mean, they definitely did a good job of the action and showing how he's grown his skill set to use the wings and, the just his fighting style to incorporate the shield as well. Cap also has some help this time from Joaquin Torres, which for the most part, he was all right. Sometimes he was a little bit annoying, but mostly all right. I mean, ultimately, I feel he could have been left out of the movie, and I probably would have appreciated it just the same. So take that for what it's worth. Harrison Ford is great in this. I didn't know what to expect from him in here, especially after the last Indiana Jones film. I liked that film, but he was definitely showing his age for being involved in an action film. But here, I felt they did a good job of finding a way to work with him, and it looked good. And I really enjoyed his performance overall in this movie. So, time for my rating. I did ultimately enjoy watching Captain America Brave New World, especially in Dolby Atmos. All the action and planes and everything that's in here, it sounded amazing, and I definitely recommend you see it that way. And I will be considering this one collection worthy, and you should check it out for yourself, form your own opinion. It tends to borrow from other MCU movies, which I've already kind of alluded to, and I might get into in spoilers a little bit, but the comics do that type of thing all the time as well, so it really wasn't much of a surprise to me. I just wish it was a little more like Winter Soldier. I mean, it's a solid action movie, so it's at least lived up to those standards for me, and I think you should check it out. And now we get to talk more about the meat of this movie. The leader, Mr. Blue, Samuel Stearns, whatever you want to call him. I think he was a very interesting character to bring into this, and I kind of enjoyed him, really. Um, he was wronged by Ross, and he really wanted revenge on him, so he chose to manipulate things from the dark and try to ruin his legacy, which, due to Sam's will and his strengths and all the empathy stuff that he has, he was able to get through to Ross despite everything the leader had thrown against him to de escalate the situation. I also like the way they had the leader look when he was in the shadows. Um, but once he stepped into the light, I wish that would have been handled a little bit better. Maybe not as crazy, but it's the choice they made. So maybe he's still kind of evolving his look, and that will be different later on. But overall, I felt Tim Blake Nelson being back was a great decision. So kudos to there. Giancarlo Esposito as Sidewinder was apparently a late addition to this movie, and his character is meant to be the leader of some serpent society, which I'm not super familiar with myself, but they've definitely taken it in a different direction that's a little bit more grounded, and I kind of respect that. I definitely think it would have been weird if they actually had like snake suits on and stuff like that, but they worked with what they had. I don't necessarily agree with all the people that are saying that he feels misused. I think he came in and played his part well, and I felt that the character really helped kind of move the story along and added enough to it that was worth it for me. I mean, he's no mastermind, but you know, he's a pawn essentially being played, and I think it worked. Ruth Bat Suraf, as a former widow was kind of an interesting choice. I didn't think it was necessary, but again, this is a character that was brought into the movie for some, I guess, assistance and stuff. But generally, I feel that she can have been pulled out of the movie altogether, and it would have been just fine. I did enjoy the inclusion of Isaiah Bradley in this, and I really feel that the film did a good job using him. And ultimately, I felt that this would be a nice little kind of closure to his story if we don't see him again. So, yes, President Thaddeus Ross. We know him as the stubborn and angry general from previous movies, but as a president, he is trying to bring people together and he's looking to make amends and make a better world. His slogan is together. And, he's also trying to reconnect with his daughter. But I feel the job of focusing on Ross in this movie worked very well. I mean, obviously, we had William Hurt representing the character before, rest in peace. But he could have gone either way. And I think they did a good job of using a character that could have been doing good or bad and manipulating things himself, which you know, they could have flipped the script and had a twist in there. But again, I feel that everything I already said about Harrison Ford's performance was great. And overall, I enjoyed the character in this movie. I still wish they would stop putting so much into trailers. I think it would have been so much cooler just to go to see the movie and see the Red Hulk pop up at the end like he did. But no, they chose to put it in the trailer, and that kind of took something away from me. And the fact that this is more of an Incredible Hulk sequel than a Captain America sequel, it just, there's something off about it to me, and I don't like how they handled that part. And honestly, regardless of whether or not you saw him in the trailer or not, having him pop up at the end and this being more of an Incredible Hulk story, I think people would have been frustrated with that point either way. So just stop ruining things in trailers, please. All right. So there were also a few different conversations in this movie that I felt worked and some that didn't. So there's the one conversation between Ross and Sam where they're kind of in whatever strategy room. I feel that conversation like, he's making the point that you're no Steve Rogers, and he's like, yeah, I'm not. But at the same time, like the conversation just drug on for far too long. Um, to compare that one to stuff like you see where Bucky shows up and him and Sam are talking, that conversation is excellent. I love the writing there, and the fact that they kind of did the whole thing where, Steve was the hope for the people, and with Sam being the person that hasn't taken the serum and he's doing all this as a normal human, it's something they can aspire to. So I really appreciate that sentiment that they put into this movie. And also, of course, they take the great dialogue and kind of make a joke of it at the end, which, like, they had such a great conversation going that I was like, oh, this is exactly what I was hoping the Ross and Sam conversation would have been. But they made a little bit of a joke at it, which ultimately ended up being fine. It doesn't take anything away from the previous part of it. I still enjoyed that. And they did get a little bit of a redemption between Ross and Sam later towards the end of the movie, where he then also meets up with his daughter. So I feel like those two conversation pieces were much well written compared to that first one that I mentioned. And lastly, I want to talk about something that I had no idea going in, which I'm kind of surprised. Usually, this type of thing would be spoiled for me somewhere along the lines, but adamantium is now in the MCU. Aside from Deadpool and Wolverine having Wolverine, this means the X-Men can now be rebooted and come into being something, which I'm all for. I don't know if I love the way they changed it, that it comes from the Celestials, but I find it to be an acceptable solution, so it doesn't pull me out of anything, and I'm really excited to see where this goes. And I just hope it tells some great stories. I did find it kind of interesting that they kind of took some jabs at Wakanda, though, for the vibranium hoarding that was going on there, but they have their reasons, so bringing adamantium in makes sense. Good job, all. So yeah, those are my thoughts on Captain America: Brave New World. Let me know what you thought down in the comments. Thanks for stopping by. Have a good one, and bye for now.